Have you ever tried using the so-called law of attraction? Visualized, mentalized, repeated affirmations. And still, it seemed like nothing really changed? Or perhaps you felt that, no matter how much you thought positively, life kept bringing you the same challenges, the same patterns, the same repetitions? What if I told you that perhaps it's not the power of thought that creates your reality, but rather the quality of your consciousness? In Buddhism, we believe that everything that happens outside is merely a reflection of what is being cultivated within, while the law of attraction teaches us to ask the universe for what we desire. Buddhism invites us to silence ourselves, to discover what truly needs to be understood, because true transformation doesn't come from forcing the universe to listen to us, but from learning to listen to it. Before we continue, I invite you to a small gesture of presence. If this message has already begun to touch something within you, leave your like, not just as a click, but as a way of saying to the universe, yes, I choose to transform myself from within. And if you feel that this is a space where your soul finds peace, subscribe to the channel so that we can continue walking together on this path of wisdom, silence, and awakening. Chapter 2: The Difference Between Wishing and Awakening. Throughout life, we've all wished for something strongly: a cure, love, a new beginning. We close our eyes, ask the universe, repeat words full of hope, believing that somehow the world will hear us. And sometimes the universe does respond, but many other times it remains silent. And it is in this silence that the most profound teaching is revealed. It is not what you ask for that shapes your path. It is what you understand within the request. The law of attraction teaches that everything begins in the thought. Think positive, they say. Visualize your victory, and it will come. But Buddhism goes further. It invites us to look not at the thought, but at the consciousness that thinks. Because the thought is like a cloud. It passes, changes shape, dissipates. But consciousness is the sky, silent, vast, unchanging. You can repeat phrases of prosperity all day, but if within you there is still fear of loss, what the universe hears is fear, not words. In Buddhism, what creates is not desire. It is intention purified by understanding. While the mind wants to conquer, consciousness wants to liberate. Desire is a movement that starts from lack. Awakening is a movement that starts from fullness. And this difference changes everything. When you desire, you are saying, I don't have. But when you awaken, you recognize, I am. Buddhist masters teach that the search for happiness is like trying to capture the moon reflected in water. The more you try to grab it, the more the water stirs, and the reflection disappears. But if you just stay still, the water calms, and the moon appears perfectly. It is in silence that truth reveals itself. It is in acceptance that transformation happens. Desire says, I want to change my reality. Awakening whispers, I want to understand my reality. And when understanding dawns, suffering dissolves. While the law of attraction tries to make the universe hear your voice, Buddhist practice teaches you to hear the voice of the universe. And perhaps that is the difference between wanting and being. Wanting screams. Being just smiles. Chapter 3: The Illusion of Control. When desire creates suffering. Narration. There comes a point in our journey when we begin to believe we can control everything. Health, love, destiny, even time. We think that if we think hard enough, if we act correctly, life will reward us like a contract signed between us and the universe. But control is a delicate illusion. The more we try to hold on to life, the more it slips through our fingers, like sand blown by the wind. In Buddhism, there is an ancient teaching that says, "He who tries to control the river loses his peace. He who lets himself be carried away by it finds the sea." When we desire something strongly, we tend to believe we are simply being determined. But what we are really doing is waging a silent struggle with what is. The law of attraction says, "Control your thoughts, keep only the positive ones." But the Buddha teaches us, observe your thoughts, good or bad, and realize that none of them are you. When you try to control what you think, it generates fear. When you simply observe, it generates freedom. Suffering arises from resistance. We want life to follow our rhythm, but it has its own, perfect, mysterious, compassionate. Think of how many times you've tried to force something to happen. A relationship, a plan, a change, and everything felt stuck, heavy, exhausting. And now remember something that simply flowed. Perhaps an unexpected encounter, an opportunity, a simple joy that appeared effortlessly. Do you notice the difference in energy? Controlled desire is born of anxiety, but understood desire is born of trust, and trust is the soil where destiny blooms. When you try to control life, it closes like a flower touched too soon. But when you observe it patiently, it opens on its own, at the perfect moment. Control is the opposite of trust, and the spiritual path is the path of trust. When you learn to let go, life begins to move on its own. That which was difficult, that which seemed distant, begins to draw closer, effortlessly. Because when the heart opens, the universe responds, not to your control, but to your surrender. Chapter 4. The Practice of Detachment in Real-Life Narration. Imagine someone who spends years trying to attract perfect love. They make lists, visualizations, repeat mantras, but inside, they fear they are not worthy of being loved. At first, it feels like hope, but over time this desire turns into anxiety, and the heart begins to close. In Buddhism, we call this attachment disguised as seeking. It's when you don't want what you want, you need what you want, and everything born of need creates suffering. Now think of someone else who has decided to simply cultivate love within themselves. They don't wait for anyone to complete them. They meditate, tend to their plants, smile at strangers on the street, and one day, love arrives. Not because they asked for it, but because they became love. In Buddhism, we don't attract what we want, we manifest what we are. There's an ancient parable that says, a monk was walking along holding a flower. When someone asked him why he didn't take it to plant, he replied, "Because every time I try to possess it, it withers. But when I simply contemplate it, it blossoms into fullness." Letting go isn't giving up, it's trusting in the natural flow of life. It's realizing that the river doesn't stop being a river because it changes direction. It simply follows the path it needs to follow. In the same way, when we let go of control, life leads us exactly where we need to be. Not before, not after. At the right time. Chapter 5. The Profound Teaching. Karma and Intention. Narration. At the heart of Buddhist teachings lies a silent truth. It's not what you do, but where you do it from. Many talk about karma as if it were punishment, but karma at its core is simply cause and effect. It's the energy of intention returning to the one who emitted it. Nothing more, nothing less. If your intention is born of fear, life returns experiences that reinforce that fear. If it's born of love, life returns opportunities to expand that love. Therefore, Buddhism teaches, it's not enough to desire wealth. You must understand the reason for the desire. If it's born of lack, it attracts more lack. But if it's born of gratitude, it transforms into natural prosperity. The same goes for love, health, and relationships. The universe responds to the vibration of your mind, not to the words you repeat. That's why the Buddha said, with a pure mind, happiness follows you, like the shadow that never leaves you. Ultimately, karma is a compassionate teacher. It doesn't punish. It simply shows you, over and over, what hasn't yet been understood. When you understand this wisdom, you realize that everything you've experienced, the good and the difficult, was just the universe trying to teach you love in different languages. In Buddhism, we don't attract what we want. We manifest what we are. Chapter 6. Hidden Effects. The Spiritual Fatigue of Seeking. Without understanding narration, there is a kind of fatigue that the body doesn't feel, but the soul knows well. It's the fatigue of trying, and trying, without ever feeling like you've arrived, of searching for answers in books, in techniques, in promises, and yet feeling that something is still missing. Many people spend years chasing happiness, as if it were a distant star. But the more they chase, the further it seems to recede. In Buddhism, we learn that this fatigue is a sign of awakening. It's the soul's call to stop searching outside and start listening within. Because peace doesn't come when you achieve everything you want. It comes when you understand that you are already everything you sought. Attachment to results creates an invisible cycle. You wish, wait, get frustrated, and try again. But the mind, in its haste, forgets that the universe has its own rhythm. Just as winter doesn't rush spring, life doesn't blossom prematurely. When you stop, when you breathe, when you accept the moment as it is, something inside realigns, and what seemed distant begins to come to you. It's not giving up, it's resting in trust. And in this rest, weariness dissolves, the heart opens, and the universe, silently, responds. Chapter 7. The Buddhist Practice That Transforms. Presence and Compassion. Narration. Buddhism teaches us that true transformation does not happen suddenly. It emerges gradually, like a flower that opens silently at dawn. There is no greater miracle than presence. Being present is feeling the moment without trying to change it. It is breathing in the now, even when it is uncertain. When you eat mindfully, when you listen to someone with an open heart, when you give thanks even for what seems small, this too is meditation. The law of attraction tries to shape reality with the mind, but Buddhism shapes the heart to understand reality. Presence is the first step. Compassion is the second. Compassion is not feeling sorry. It is understanding that everyone, including you, is doing the best they can with the awareness they have. When you act with compassion, when you forgive, when you listen, when you embrace yourself, the energy around you shifts, the mind calms, and life begins to flow again. Monks say that true practice is not in sacred words, but in how you treat others, because silent love is the most powerful mantra there is. When you awaken presence and compassion, you no longer need to attract anything, because everything you need is already here. Chapter 8. Final Reflection. What Really Transforms. Narration. After so much searching, desiring, and trying to change the world, perhaps the greatest discovery is realizing that nothing outside needs to change, only the way you look. Transformation isn't magic, it's surrender. It's when the heart, tired of fighting, finds rest in the simple act of being. In Buddhism, we learn that life doesn't become perfect when everything goes right. It becomes serene when you stop resisting what is. Because true power isn't in attracting things, but in understanding yourself deeply. When you understand your mind, you free yourself. When you free yourself, you stop asking and start being grateful. The law of attraction tries to create the future. Buddhist practice awakens the present. And perhaps in the end, it's not about having more, but about being more conscious, more grateful, more whole. You don't need to ask the universe to change. Just be awake enough to realize that it is already complete. And you, what do you feel you need to understand today before trying to change tomorrow? If this message brought a little light to your heart, like this video and share it with someone who, perhaps, is trying to change the world without realizing that change begins in the silence within. And if you want to continue reflecting, watch the next video here on the screen. See you there, with peace and presence.